Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Energy Transition Key Insights from GCoM Signatories event today in the EU Pavilion. Welcome to everyone here in the room and online. Hoping we have lots of exciting content for you today. We do have English and French translation, so please put your headsets on. It's quite a loud environment, so if you can put your headsets on, channel English for one and French for two. My name is Marnie McGregor. I'm with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, GCoM. We represent over 12,500 mayors in over 144 countries, over 1 billion population strong, and we are very lucky to have Executive Vice President from the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, as one of our co-chairs, along with former Mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg. Unfortunately, Executive Vice President Timmermans cannot be with us today because of important negotiations obviously happening here on the floor of COP. But we do have a representative from his cabinet, Senior Diplomatic Advisor Anthony Ogata, and Mr. Bertrand Piccard, explorer and founder of the Solar Impulse Foundation, to discover really how we can energize the clean energy transition and meet the urgency of the moment that we're living in today. So we're going to start off with some short remarks, first from Mr. Piccard, with some of his innovation and exciting activities that he's working on in his space. Then we'll hear from Mr. Agata. And then we really are looking forward to hearing from the audience to open it up to questions. But after that, we do have a very exciting panel of mayors from the Global Covenant of Mayors that we'll be speaking to with our colleague Arrow, who will be moderating them, so we don't want you to leave your seats. Look forward to staying here for the next 90 minutes or so. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Piccard to give us 5 minutes, if you can, and I'll be watching my clock, to make sure we hear all of the things that you're working on in your world. I know you're advising the European Commission, and really looking forward to hearing particularly what we can do with the urgency of the moment and how we can step up to increase the transition as quickly as possible.
Good afternoon to everyone. Why do we have so little progress in the negotiations of the COP, not only this year, but also the other years? I think that there is this idea that we have to act now to decarbonize the world. Okay, that's a goal. And everybody says we have to reach that. Okay, a goal is there to be reached. But there is a huge lack of understanding on how to reach the goal. How to decarbonize, what to do. And the result is that a lot of negotiators believe that committing to ambitious goals is a handicap and a sacrifice for their economic development. So they try to do as little as possible because they don't want to jeopardize their development and the job creation. But it's exactly the opposite that should happen. Exactly the opposite. Because today, decarbonization is the most profitable business opportunity of the century. Why that? Because decarbonization means that we have to become more efficient and use more efficient sources of energy. When I speak of efficiency, you might hear me repeat this very often. Efficiency means that we can obtain a better result in consuming less resources, less water, less food waste, less energy, and so on. It means that you save money, and this money can be used for the purchase power of the poorest people, as well as for the investment into the solutions to become more efficient. Which means that if we put around the table all the negotiators, all the solutions on the table, and the COP would be a partnership explaining which solution can be implemented where to increase the purchase power, to increase the economic development, and to protect the environment by decarbonization, it would go much faster. So is it a wishful thinking? No, because we have the proof that it works. This is what we have done at the Solar Impulse Foundation the last 5 years, putting the team to identify everywhere in the world the solutions that exist today. Not high-tech solutions for the future, solutions that exist today. that are economically profitable and able to decarbonize, protect the environment, and improve efficiency. And this year at the COP, we published the solution guide for cities. 200 of these solutions that are experimented in several cities, put together as success stories in order to show how these solutions could be put worldwide in all the cities. The cities existing and the cities to come. Because you know that we have to host newcomers on this planet and newcomers in the cities, which represents the need over the next 20 years to build the equivalent of Manhattan every 4 months. So when we speak about this challenge, either we close our eyes and we say it's too difficult, or we say, wow, that's a fantastic opportunity, because if cities are the centers of so much emissions, 75% of the emissions of the world, it is also the place where you have 80% of the GDP, meaning that the mayors have a fantastic opportunity to implement solutions. So for us at the Solar Impulse Foundation, the best place to be is today at this panel, because they are mayors, because we have this MOU signed with a Covenant of Mayors, that cities want to be carbon neutral, that we have coalitions of cities. It's absolutely fantastic. But here, again, we have to show what are the solutions for these cities to decarbonize and to increase their economical development. Otherwise, it will never happen. So just to conclude, I want you to remember one thing. If you hear that decarbonization is difficult, you have to know it's not true, because solutions exist. If you hear that it's expensive and detrimental for economical development, you have to know it's not true, because it is the most profitable thing we can do to save our economy as well as saving the planet. And this message is, of course, not a message for the green activists who know already that we have to protect the planet, but it's the message for the key decision makers in order to speak their language, the one of job creation and profit.
Excellent message. Excellent message. Very powerful. And essentially what we're hearing is decarbonization is an economic opportunity that everyone should be taking advantage of. And we know many cities are doing this, but how can we, it sounds like this is a fantastic new report, and we can elevate that even further, more quickly. So now from your perspective, Tony, if we could just get you to give, on behalf of Executive Vice President Timmermans and one of our co-chairs, what the EU is doing in a leadership position in this area at a high level, given the context of the world that we're in and many of our city audiences here today.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Picard. It's a big honor for me to sit next to you, and I'm going to try to channel my boss, the Executive Vice President, Frans Timmermans, as best I can. First of all, what the EU did, we think is rather bold. For the first time, we did not wait for the rest of the world, but we made a bold step forward and said, okay, we got to do this. We got to change the paradigm when it comes to mobility. We have to change the paradigm when it comes to the built environment, to agriculture, to energy, to transport, you name it. And the Green Deal is a reflection of it. And we knew that the window of opportunity was open, but events could overturn it. And then COVID came. And so our first concern was COVID is going to wreak havoc around the world for health. And the second worry was we might lose the Green Deal, because there are always forces who don't like change. People don't like change. But if anything, what COVID showed is that we accelerated our transition, because we put in the DNA of our recovery, which is unlocking trillions of euros, the digital and green transition, and that gave us wings. And we came forward with a truly paradigm-shifting legislative package of 13 legislative proposals we call Fit for 55, which is not a fitness program for people like myself, but is targeting all of this. So it's not just ambitions, because the ambitions are cheap, but it's actually the hard work, policies that put this into place. And as we speak, we've already we've already agreed to 3 on cars, 0 emissions in 2035, on our effort sharing, which increases our efficiency, on LULUCF, which is a horrible acronym, but has to do with forests and sinks, and where we said we need to cut our emissions at least at 55% in 2030. Today, my executive vice president can say, if we add up what we said we will do, we could be at least 57%. So I'm here to tell you that no matter what the spin is out there about Europe being derailed, the contrary is true. We are staying the course, and not only that, we're accelerating. And the exciting thing is, when you look across the Atlantic Ocean, with President Biden coming forward with an Inflation Reduction Act, which I think has little to do with inflation, but has everything to do with climate change, it's an undeniable signal that the transition road is the road to go. It is so much more expensive to continue on the way that we have now and destroy the world. It is a lot cheaper to make the transition and double down and actually make the world healthy. And we don't do this. My boss always says it. We don't do this for the planet. The planet has been around for 4.5 billion years. It has been without humans for almost 3.5 to 4 billion years, did perfectly fine. And if Mother Earth decides to get rid of us, she will be fine too. This is about us. This is about our health. This is about our well-being, our economic well-being of everyone, whether you're in Amsterdam or whether, as Yusuf, we just spoke, you're in Lebanon, which has many different challenges from other cities and all the cities around. That is why we are doing it, not just for us and our children, but for the trillions of unborn generations who don't have a voice now. So I think what we're doing and what you can do in the cities is to be a good ancestor, to actually not just make life great for us now so that we can have that hamburger and have that extra car, but to build for the decades instead of the next electoral cycle, to build for future generations and to stop and think, what is the impact of our decisions upon generations that come, and stop colonizing their future. So this is our Green Deal. And I think the challenge that we have, and I assume the challenge that you have as mayors in the cities, is to continue to convince ordinary citizens that this is the way to go. Because people will say, and I repeat what Mr. Picard says because it's so important, but what about the costs? It's so costly to do it. And when they say that, they very seldom internalize the costs of non-action. I repeat about how expensive it is. Wildfires, freak storms, droughts, conflicts, migration, you name it. I mean, since the Roman times, the only river that has been described was the river de Loire, which was dry this summer for the first time in 2,000 years. These are serious things. So the cost of non-action is tremendous. And the greatest swindle, and I will end on that, the greatest swindle and injustice is to tell those people who are most vulnerable that to do today what you did yesterday will make tomorrow the same. Because with or without the Green Deal, everything is changing. And what we need to do is to become masters of our fate and not just think, close our eyes, close our ears, it will all be fine, let's not look up. So the real answer, the honest answer is to make these transitions in the cities when it comes to bike lanes, when it comes to solar panels, when it comes to insulating houses, when it comes to the urban water system, lighting with LED. There are so much practical things that you can already do now. We don't even have to look at faraway technologies and have this as an asterisk in our budgets like, well, that will solve it. We have the skills, we have the brains, we have the people. Yes, we even have money. There is abundant money in private capital waiting to be invested because they want return on investment. What they ask from us is regulations and security that this is the way to go. And as Mr. Picard shows with his solution to the guide for cities, we have the technology now that is viable, sustainable, and commercial. So thank you for your work. We need the mayors because young people, mayors, and even business are sometimes faster than politicians who need courage and money, which are scarce commodities in the world today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the leadership. And what I really heard was, in fact, staying the course. And this is, in fact, all the conditions that we're talking about, the pandemic, the geopolitical tensions and whatnot, these are actual impetus to increase and enhance and even move more quickly. And the generational messages are absolutely ones that we think about every day in our work and really appreciate those remarks. So I will give one quick question myself to kick it off, and then I really want to open it up to the audience for the last 10 minutes or so that we have. So we heard you speak a lot about how cities can be part of the solution. And I'm really looking forward to the second part of this where we can get into some of those specific examples from Hobart, Lebanon, Sub-Saharan Africa, and others. So what do you see specifically? You said energizing youth, energizing citizens. It can often be, you said citizens can be ahead of it, mayors can be ahead of things as well. Mayors can be leaders, mayors are piloting things. What do you think, Mr. Picard, particularly, where you're partnering with cities, you've got the specific guide, solar panels to bike lanes to even beyond, what specifically from an innovation perspective do you think cities can do, and where can you really partner with the private sector and other partners?
Cities can innovate in something that will not cost them a penny. It is modern regulation. Because today, what is the big handicap? It's the fact that we have a huge modernization into the technological solutions, but the regulation have stayed the same for a long time, which means that it is legally allowed to use the infrastructures of the past. It is legally allowed to be inefficient, to waste energy, to waste water, to waste resources, to throw the CO2 in the atmosphere and the plastic in the ocean. It is legally allowed. And when you criticize the people who do it, they answer, we are following the norms and the standards that are written in the law. And this has to change, because we don't ask for the cities to become futuristic and science fiction cities. We just ask the cities to write the legislation that will pull to the market everything that exists today but that is blocked because of legislation. I just give you an example. It is today possible, technically possible, to produce concrete with 100% of recycled demolition waste. But the regulation allows 5% in most of the countries and most of the cities, because the specialists who have 100 years of experience with the old way to make the concrete are afraid because it's new. It's exactly the same type of things with public lighting, with LED, solar panel, and battery. In a city, it would save 37% of the energy bill of the city. But in a lot of places, it is too innovative. So in the public procurement, it's just 5% of it that is allowed, when it should be mandatory to have all these things. So what we request from the legislator in the cities is not to put the regulation on which technology has to go on the market, but be ambitious in the standards of the norms, setting very high efficiency rules, very high recycling rules, very high public procurement rules. And then you will see that the situation will change by itself, because all the innovators, all the companies, all the constructors, all the industries, all the sectors will use them. They will just use these solutions because they're available and they're profitable. So you see that you can change your city without spending a penny.
Thanks for that. I do know that we launched a playbook yesterday, and public procurement was listed in there. I'll give a little plug for that as one of the tools. I will say that national governments have to be part of the solution as well. Cities don't always have the authority, but it's very well taken in terms of the setting the tone, setting the bar, setting the standard. Definitely want to turn it over to the audience if we can. We've got a gentleman here, so we've got a few minutes for a couple questions. Sir.
Yes, I've got a question specifically around sustainability in buildings engineering. I have somewhat of a background in that. But the refurbishment cycle of buildings in cities, a building gets to 18, 23 years old, they start at 18 years old, they rip out the heating, then they do the cooling later, then the ventilation, they don't talk to each other, and they put new versions of old equipment, so the building is as inefficient as when it was first built 20, 30 years ago. So optimizing a refurbishment cycle, you can get consistently a 60% cost saving within a capex that already existed, and you get an operating saving of around about 60% before you go to renewables. But what's really interesting there is that the CO2 reduction is around 60% just by doing intelligent refurb. And globally, several gigatons are given up by inefficient buildings. It's a low-hanging fruit. If we had legislation in place to deal with buildings refurb, we've got budgets there to do it, we could get a 20% reduction in CO2 emissions globally through retuning buildings efficiently. Is there any move amongst mayors in order to drive legislative direction to overall government to actually mandate that buildings are refurbed to a standard that's available to everybody?
Tony, do you want to take a crack at that?
Well, the question was whether the mayors are doing, but I can say from the EU point of view, part of our package is building requirements. Now, sometimes a lot of the building stock is also old buildings, which it's sometimes difficult to modernize. So also part of it is, well, you say no. In Italy, the backlash we get from some of the buildings there, it is very difficult to modernize it to the standards if you build completely anew. But we have, for instance, in that requirement that every building of such that is so and so large would have to have electric charging points, for instance. So we have all kinds of stuff in there. We're trying to also create cleaner. We need cleaner concrete, having a CO2 low carbon building materials, and we're trying to legislate that better. Ultimately, what we also find that the building sector is sometimes also a bit conservative. So sometimes you come with great solutions out there, but people have been trained with other materials, or there are certain unwritten or written contracts to deal with certain things. So it's also a difficult sector, but we're trying to overturn it because we're keenly aware of the low-hanging fruit, as you say it, when it comes to buildings, with making them sustainable. In the next 50 to 60 years, 70% of what's built now will still be there. So we really need to get there. But it's not always that easy.
Refurbishing of old buildings is clearly something that costs a lot of money to the city and brings a lot of profit for the people living in the buildings. So you see that there is a disbalance. If you have to pay with public money to renovate the buildings, the energy bill of the people living in the building will be much lower, but they will pay nothing. They will not participate to it. And this is one of the big handicaps to renovate everything. So what should the legislation do? It should organize a system where a part, maybe the half, of what the people save in the energy bill will be paid to the people who are investing in the renovation of the building. Otherwise, it will be an obstacle. People won't do it. And if it's a private owner of a building who is investing, he will pay for the others to make the profit, and it will be expensive for him. So public money, private money, it needs to be reimbursed by a part of the energy bill reduction that the inhabitants will.
You want to jump in again, Tony, and then we'll get one more question.
I think that's an excellent example, and things that, and I'm sure some people do this, and I know in my country, a lot of people, if you ask them, do you want solar panels on your roof? They say yes, but how do I do it? And how do I pay for it? Because it's just too expensive. But sometimes if you can organize, like in a whole region or a whole community, where you say, okay, you know what? We're going to put bank money and local money in there. We're going to put solar panels on your roof. For the next 6 years, you will not pay a dime less on your energy bills, but that money, which you save through the solar, will go to paying off the solar panels. After 6 years, those panels are yours. That way, the wallets remain closed, but it requires more intelligent organizing, looping in local banks. The profit is that you have local, not outsourced work. You have local work, which is also a challenge sometimes. We don't always have the hands, but you can keep local work, get jobs, and get people on those solutions which they individually could not afford.
And I think we will hear from the mayors a little bit later because I know there's some great examples there too. So thanks for that question. One very quick more question before we wrap up this part of the panel. Woman in the back over there.
Hello, good afternoon, distinguished guests. I am Templana Rekia Ahwaizer, the Special Assistant on Environment and Climate Change to the Honorable Minister of State, FCT, that's Abuja in Nigeria. So my question is just a kind of observation because we're talking about the energy transition and we're talking about the solar panels. Right now, many people, I mean the masses, cannot even afford the prices of getting these solar panels. So how do we want this thing to be sustainable? So I think I made a presentation about these solar panels that it should be very, very affordable to the masses so that each and every one will not start thinking of it. Because the truth of the matter is that if you ask them or you go to the grassroots, you ask them, we're trying to bring solar panels to your door. Say, oh, it's very expensive. We cannot afford that. So we rather go with our local ways of making things work out. If only we can make it affordable to the grassroots, the masses that actually need this.
Excellent.
So thank you very much. That's
Thank you for that question. Great question. Mr. Picard, you want to take a first go at that?
What you say was absolutely true 5 or 10 years ago. Absolutely. Solar energy was expensive and had to be subsidized. Today, the cheapest energy in the world is solar energy. And the second cheaper is wind energy. So the big paradox is that we find a lot of investment to go into fossil fuels, where you have a centralized power plant with expensive power lines going into the country and not reaching the periphery, not reaching the people who would like to be connected to the grid and have no access to electricity. This is the result of centralized, expensive power plants with fossil fuels. Now, if you look at what we can do with renewables, you can do a delocalized production. You can put solar cells, you can put wind turbines, you can put biomass production, you can put hydroelectricity of small rivers, you can put geothermic wells everywhere, to give access to electricity to the poorest people. And if you do that, you will always get the investments, always, because it is more profitable. Because when you have a community off-grid that suddenly has access to renewable energy, you will have jobs created, you will have a local economy developing, you will have more wealth, and you will have more health, and you will have more education. This you cannot do with centralized fossil plants. You can only do it with delocalized renewables. And just to give you an example, in Portugal, which is not the country maybe where we think it's going to be the cheapest, they produce 1.5 cents for each kilowatt hour. The cheapest in the world, because it's one of the most modern and they made a good public procurement in Portugal. This is what has to be done everywhere.
Thank you for that, Tony. We're running out of time, but do you want to just cap up really quickly?
I fully agree with Mr. Picard, but at the same time, I think your point is an extremely relevant point. We cannot do this just for the people who can buy Teslas. We have to do it for the people who are wanting this most. And in Africa, particularly Nigeria, is a huge country with huge potential, but the energy access or the energy poverty of Africa and the continent is the biggest single challenge. So we need to get that. But it's exactly as Mr. Picard says. I think it's a sovereign choice, whatever you choose. But I'm afraid that the worst choice would be to go to what we know to, is the oil and the coal, maybe gas as a transition, but to go to those sources, to use a lot of expensive money putting in investments that in 5 or 10 year time will be stranded assets, and you will be left with pollution, you will left energy poverty that's even more, and stranded assets. So the best thing to do is, and I think Europe is reaching out to Africa, is we need you. We will need your hydrogen. We will need your energy. And so with the investments together, that can be done.
Thank you so much for that. I don't want to take up more time in the next panel, but thank you so much to our esteemed panelists. Thank you, Mr. Picard, for all of this inspiration. Very much inspiring leadership. Thank you, Tony, for filling in for your boss and doing such a great job at convening these messages. Very much looking forward to you bringing up Aero and the mayors and continuing the conversation. So don't leave your seats. Stay right where you are. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, good morning, or are we still afternoon, or are we already afternoon? Anyway, now we're going to kick off with a panel of mayors, and we've also kept Mr. Picard. We don't let you go yet, indeed. The focus we have now is on the actions that the cities are doing under the Global Covenant of Mayors program, or initiative, where we have indeed more than 11,000 cities around the world committed to climate change. And this session is indeed going to look at the concrete actions, discuss some of the ideas that are coming from the cities that are happening actually, as we know that this is the time for action now. My name is Eero Ailio. I'm working at the European Commission and DG Energy, and indeed pretty passionate about cities, initiatives, Global Covenant, also the city's mission that was mentioned here earlier at the previous session. And I'll now introduce our distinguished panel here. So we start here from Mayor Chilando Chitangala, from Mayor of Lusaka in Zambia. We are not talking about a small town here. It's indeed 3 million people. And with a very special situation, as I understand that, a large part of the population is actually living in informal settlements. So that means that the mayor has special challenges to run the city. And I believe you're also the first female elected mayor of Lusaka, and also the vice chairperson of the Covenant of Mayors Sub-Saharan Africa. So welcome. And well, Mr. Picard, I believe, doesn't need much more new presentations, except that let's start to those people who might not have been here in the beginning. So indeed, we are talking about here a pioneering person who set up the Solar Impulse Foundation after having shown to the world how you can do amazing things, flying around the world with a solar plane, with a balloon, and things like that, showing things which used to be impossible, how they can actually be made possible. And then next we have indeed Anna Reynolds, the elected Lord Mayor of Hobart in Australia since 2018. And I understand that you have been first an alderman in that part of Australia. You worked a lot on various environmental activities of the city, and you've been working in the North Queensland Community Legal Centre as well. And I think you've done a lot of advocacy and policy development management, and then working on certain things like affordable housing. So I want to hear about these things later on. And then at the all the way to my left, to your right, we have indeed Mayor Georges Youssef from the municipality of Menjes in Lebanon. So Menjes is a very special city. We spoke yesterday evening. I learned a lot about the historic importance and mixture of cultures in Menjes. And you are involved in the Covenant of Mayors, the Mediterranean part of that since 2014. You've been doing climate action planning, concrete things, and with setting clear targets to reduce emissions in your city. So that's the panel. Let's start off already by a couple of questions. And I will already say that Mr. Youssef, I believe you will be speaking in French then when it's your turn. So keep the earphones close to you if you don't speak French yet. So let's get going. We have the situation of energy crisis now, which is quite special. This is not normal times. And this crisis is hitting different regions of the world in different ways. In Europe, we're at the situation that we are not sure if we have enough energy actually to keep houses warm in the winter. In other parts of the world, usually it's affecting the prices of energy, which are rising really rapidly. And then there are different types of challenges. For example, in Lusaka, in your area, in Africa, there's the pressure coming from population increase. In Australia, Oceania, it's about the weather extremes, which are really, we all remember the fires very recently. So these are this is the setting where we are. So in this complex setting, and with the Russian-Ukrainian crisis as well, what are the cities and local governments doing to save energy and still at the same time keep on course the mitigation and the adaptation activities? So doing both of this, that would be the question I would ask. Perhaps I will ask from Mayor Reynolds first, and then we continue from there.
Happy to kick things off. Yes, the energy crisis is affecting, and inflation crisis is affecting most countries around the world. So although the Ukrainian situation has kind of tripped this crisis off, it has the ripple effects are right around the world. So I think in Hobart at the moment we have the highest inflation rate of any capital city in Australia, which I think last time I looked was about 9% in the last quarter. And one of the major reasons for the high inflation is rising energy prices, both petrol and diesel and electricity prices in Australia. So Tasmania actually has an independent, could be independently able to support itself through its hydropower, but it has made a choice to sign up to the national electricity market, and so we are affected by increasing power prices as well. A lot of people in our city have very high dependence on petrol vehicles. Unfortunately, during COVID, people decided with COVID subsidies that were handed out by the state government, the federal government, people decided to invest in these huge new utilities, sports utility vehicles, which are the fastest growing cars in Australia. And so people are now confronting these very severe additional household energy costs. This impacts on the council in multiple ways. One is that all of our costs are going up. So even though we've done a lot of work with the efficiency of our buildings and solar panels on our buildings, and we're transitioning our fleet to electric vehicles, it doesn't mean that all the various products that we're buying, the prices of those are going up, or contractors, their prices are going up too. And just politically, when residents are getting bigger energy bills, they don't want to pay higher rates bills. So there's a lot of pressure on us. Our main income is on property rates. And if we do anything to sort of increase property rates in line with inflation, we get the community pushes back against that because they're also getting higher petrol costs and electricity costs. So all of this does create a very difficult environment for councils, and one where we have to adapt and think about new solutions. So one of the key things is that we actually do have to fast track our energy independence, both as a council and encourage our households to do the same. And in Australia, the biggest movement to do that is with rooftop solar. And I think Australia, I might be making a big call here, but I think we are the leaders in the world when it comes to rooftop solar. I think it is 3 million rooftop solar systems in Australia, generating 17 gigawatts of energy, and it is actually the largest generator of electricity in Australia. We've got rooftop solar on almost all of our public buildings, sports facilities, workshops, and it saves us over $1 million a year in electricity costs as a council. And it also is, it provides us with a level of energy independence. So I think that is a really important direction for us to continue to take. As you mentioned, solar is just, the price of solar has just decreased massively. And in Australia, there are quite a lot of companies that are tapping into the provision of solar where they will install up front, and there'll be a sort of a financing system to make it affordable over time to pay it off. So it does make it a lot more accessible to a much broader range of households, which is why we've seen such a huge uptake in Australia. And I think we just need to do more of that. And now the electric vehicle is being sold as this can be your home battery. So rather than investing in a sort of fancy new battery, you can link your solar panels into your electric vehicle and use the vehicle when it's stationary overnight as your home battery, which is really clever. I haven't done it myself yet. I've got an electric vehicle, but haven't quite rigged up that whole system.
But that's good. That's really good that you're getting into this also vehicle to this kind of home energy management systems, which is indeed very attractive. Can I turn to my left here to the mayor of Lusaka, indeed. Mayor Chitangala, maybe you can explain from your perspective a little bit how this situation is in reality in a very different continent and very different context. So these climate challenges and then at the same time the higher energy price. So are you managing ways how to square this circle?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, when you say that many cities globally are facing energy crisis right now, I would say that Africa has been facing this crisis for many, many years. And my country and city is one of them. Yeah. So we have a very bad energy crisis because even when we have droughts or flooding, we can't even supply electricity to most parts of the city. So for us, we use hydroelectricity, and I think that is not what Mr. Bernard wants to hear, and it's very, very expensive. Yeah, but then we've been trying to transition now to solar. So as a council, for us, we are encouraging our residents in the city to use to transition to solar. So we use solar street lights now. We're transitioning to solar street lights, and also trying to use clean energy in our communities. But like one of the participants, the lady said, it's been very expensive for us. In a city like Lusaka, where 70% of the people that live in the city live in informal sector, so it means service is not there. And then also we have a population of over 3.5 million people. This is Lusaka is one of the fastest growing cities in Africa, with a lot of urbanization happening. And when urbanization is happening, it means more informal sector. So we have these challenges. So using solar, I would definitely agree that it's a very expensive transition for us, because even when we want to remove people from, for example, majority of the people that live in informal, even myself, I do use charcoal sometimes, and charcoal means that I am cutting down trees and then make the charcoal. So I am also part of that problem. But then we are trying to make people now move from charcoal to pallets. But then the difference with charcoal is that it's very accessible. People will just go out there, and the neighbor is selling charcoal in the nearby market selling charcoal. Where the pallets, you have to go to a certain community or a supermarket to go and buy those pallets. So that also becomes a challenge. And also, the government has also been helping us and also making us try and understand as local authorities that we really have to make sure that we move to solar. But then going back to the people, everybody says, yes, the transitioning is expensive, but the benefits are better. Yes, the benefits are better. So for us, really, it's just the transitioning from what we're using now to what we should be using. I think that's where our problem is. So as a council, we are using, we are moving from the electricity street lights to solar. And most of the street lights are going solar, but we don't even have street lights everywhere. But all this, we need support, technical support, financing support, and of course to conduct feasibility and assessment renewable energy efficiency projects. We need a lot of support in that. Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, you talk about solar street lights, and I think when we take the bus, I mean, it would from the hotels to this venue, so we see along the road on the right side where I think it's the airport. So you have these solar street lights all over the place, and one after each other. So clearly they are using that technology here, just around the corner. So it's maybe some of our Egyptian friends.
Yeah,
could
but
explain
we've
a bit,
also, just to make our communities understand also, we work with the communities right at the bottom.
Yeah.
We use the bottom-up approach so that we communicate with the people and then do the campaign right at the bottom. So they give us feedback and we give feedback to the central government. But we've created what we call junior council that helps us with the campaigns and sensitization on the ground, at the ground level, to just make people understand that we have to move from what we're doing to the transition of using solar or using pellets and using gas. But what we'd like to see is the people that do charcoal, that is their livelihood. So when you go there and tell them you can't do this, then they ask you, then what do we do? So we have to find an alternative. So here it's really trying to find an alternative for them to use, and a cheap alternative, so cheaper gas and pellets, especially for cooking.
Okay, I think at this moment we've been talking solar and issues like that. I believe Bertrand, you probably would like to come with some comments on this, because I think it would be good to hear if you've come across or some solutions that could help with this aspect. I think we are, how to find an also alternative sort of economic activity to these people who are going to be losing. And after that, I will ask also Youssef Mayor Menges to come up with colleagues, because I know that you have very interesting situation in your city when it comes to energy adequacy. But please, Bernard.
I would like to say two things. The first one is that it's not only solar to make renewable. Sometimes solar is not the good solution. Then you should rather have biomass. Biomass is using all the waste from agriculture, from farms, from landfills, from oil and gas companies, to turn them into biogas, allowing to solve about 20% of the energy needs of the world. So we also have to include the other sources of energy and not only solar. Now, the second thing I'd like to say is that when we say it's expensive, what does it mean? Because very often we make a confusion between the cost and the investment. The cost is when you spend money and the money is lost. You don't have the money and you don't have the product. When you buy a bag of charcoal, it's a cost. At the end of the day, you don't have the money and you have burned the charcoal and you have nothing. When you speak about renewable energies, it's an investment. Of course, you have to pay a lot of money upfront for the infrastructure. But then the entire production of this infrastructure is for free. So over the time, you recover the money that you have invested. And it's always much easier to find money for investment than for a cost. And the money for investment in the developing countries comes from the World Bank, from development aid, from a lot of institutions worldwide that are precisely there to help for the upfront investment of something that will be cheaper over time. So each time you hear something is expensive, ask over the total time of ownership, what will it cost? And you see that it's very different from what we think at the beginning.
Good, thank you. Thank you. That was a good point to clarify indeed those two concepts, because I agree. I'm an economist, so maybe that's why. So I pay attention to that kind of things. But now, Mayor Youssef, would you like to come in with some messages from Lebanon? And I heard over the discussion we had here with colleagues that you have a very specific situation when it comes to also access to energy in your city. So perhaps, please.
Bonjour.
Good morning, as Mrs. Mayor of Osaka, and we also have some crisis since 2005. The municipality is a recent municipality and have been created in 2012. We didn't have municipality. We depended on the department W. So I was elected after the creation of the municipality, and they have added the European program, and they helped us to sign the convention of the GCoM, the Global Covenant of Mayors. And we have afterwards developed an action plan concerning the renewable energy and climate change sustainable energy action plan. And in this action plan, we consider some targets which we have to achieve before 2020. And this action plan, we have some actions that explain how to get to those targets in a short term, long term. And we know that the situation of Lebanon, the national government cannot help the municipalities only with a small amount of funding. And so we have worked a lot. Now, this has been very much appreciated by the whole population. So this action plan was taken by ourselves. So this was implemented within all the donors in the Lebanon, within the program of European Union and all the development agencies. So we wanted to meet all the dates of the bids also that want to sustain all the local initiatives in terms of resilience and climate resilience or renewable energy. We have succeeded to implement in our municipalities some pilot projects, a photovoltaic plant that enabled up to now, that has provided all the provision of during the sun times. We have 300 days of sunshine, and we have from 8 to 10 hours depending on the season, either in summer or spring. So all this allows everybody to have the energy, the small households and the small companies as well as the municipalities. So we have allowed also manpower and business and work within the municipality, and we have assured for the municipality, as Mr. Picker has said, money, because now we are collecting the money within those who are working with this project. And so we had more income for the municipality. So another project that we have taken into account is that we have changed all the public lighting from a conventional lighting to a LED lighting. So the public lighting has been changed into a LED lighting by means of the aid of the European Union, and also biomass, as Mr. Pika has said, all has another kind of financing, Norwegian financement. We have presented a very ambitious project to transform all the waste, forest waste, which are the cause of fires, and so to take all those waste and all agricultural wastes and to transform that for heating and for warming. So also this has changed the bill of warming. So we also created a lot of jobs, and we had also season jobs to take all this biomass within the forestry of the municipality, and also to create some income for the municipality, because this is sold to the societies, the households. So last year, we have estimated the briquette and 10 times for the budget which has been assured by the state. This is what has, and we have also been inspired to within this World Convention, the Global Covenant of Majors, to update our plan, because it was being done to 2020. So now we have another agreement for 2030, and we have all the material in which is being considered. We are updating our action plan to implement some other actions. And besides that, we have been installed and we have implemented other action plans. We have 4 action plans ongoing, and we have implemented on the ground another project in the field. Maybe we can talk about it. The reforestation, and we had large campaigns to protect the biodiversity and the cultural heritage.
Times the budget that is coming from this biomass production. That makes a big difference, certainly, at the municipality level. Well, good. Let's continue. Let's look at now how we can go into the or tackle the challenge of engaging cities and particularly the citizens in this change, because I think some of these topics came up already here. So, what kind of advice would you like to give? And let me start here, perhaps with Mayor Chitangala first. The kind of advice on how to engage the cities, how to engage the local community, the citizens, and perhaps also companies, because I think what you were talking about, the charcoal issue. I mean, these are, entrepreneurs. How to engage them in this change of habits. Is that, what do you use? Education? What kind of methods do you have? It's really about changing our habits on how we use energy and.
Okay. So what we've been doing is, of course, we do have a problem with mindsets of the people. Yeah. First of all, we believe that gas is dangerous because it will blow and it may kill you. So that is one of the things that we have to do now is community engagement, trying to now get to the people and explain to them that it's not dangerous and we can use this cheaper way of using, cleaner way of using for cooking. For example, Lusaka is surrounded by other districts, so it means that it is a beneficiary of the charcoal business that comes in from other districts into Lusaka. So we are the biggest consumers and the biggest buyers of that charcoal. So it brings a very big burden on the city. And I've been to one of the nearby cities, and I went to just talk to them and hear what goes on. And I asked them, when you cut down the trees, do you plant a tree? And the answer was no. So we still now have to go back to them and, really do the campaign, plant a tree campaign. If you cut the tree, replace the tree. Because in the next 8 years or 10 years, you won't have any trees. They'll all be gone. So apart from just the community engagement, you also have to teach them that they need to replace those trees before we find them a better solution. But I think when we sit with other cities, other mayors, and talk about these things that happen in Africa, the story is very similar. We need, and when we do the sensitization, obviously it's we also need funding to do that sensitization so that it takes a longer period. But for my city, like I said, we've been using what we call WDCs. These are Ward Development Committees. This is like the lowest governance structure, so that they help us as well to go down to the people and start teaching them that we need to move from where we are to the next step. But we don't have a sustainable energy climate action plan. So I think that is where the problem is. If we had that and we had support, probably we could prepare better as a city. Yeah. But what we've done is we do the campaigns from bottom up. Yeah, we go right down to the communities and use the children that we are calling the junior mayors, our WDCs. They're the ones that we use to do the campaign, so that we do a lot of sensitization for people to understand that we have to move. Yeah.
That's good. Well, the plan, we have to fix that one. So I believe the Covenant colleagues can help with that, because that's super important to get going. I know who would like to come on this sort of engagement aspect, perhaps. I know Anna?
Sure.
Sure.
So I think it's absolutely important to recognise the value of public education and campaigns. I love the idea of the junior mayors selling the message and getting the next generation to be more engaged. And it is about empowering the community to embrace the challenge as a shared challenge, not as just a government challenge. We are planning next year to establish a community target for Hobart, because a lot of cities say that they're zero emissions, even in Australia, and they've certainly made their operations zero emissions, and then they've purchased offsets for the rest. And in some ways that's good, but it's a bit of an easy way out. And to actually engage the community in, what does a zero emissions target look for the entire municipality of Hobart, and what are we prepared to give up or shift to, and trying to engage the community in the challenges we face as elected members, the often difficult decisions we have to make that are unpopular, and if the community can sort of help recognise that those decisions, in some ways, some of them are tough. But I think I also should mention, in terms of some of the work that needs to be done, we do need to make it easy for people, and then in some of the work we need to do, we need to make it harder for people. So there's the two sides of the coin, and it's the sort of carrot and the stick. With the making it easy, I do want to mention a program that was initiated by Victorian local governments called Solar Savers, and it's now a program right across the state of Victoria, and it was initiated by local government, and it does put solar panels on the roofs of the poorest households in the community, and then the payback, there's some subsidy from the city and the state government, but then the contribution that the resident makes is added to their rates bill. So it's a small amount every quarter that is added onto their rates bill. So it just the whole process is made easy for people. Someone comes to their door, they sign up to it, and then the whole system is they don't even have to think about it again. And I think the more that we can make energy services and sort of carbon transition services more accessible for people, that will just make it easy, because people are busy, they've got a lot on, they're busy surviving, and we really do need to sort of think about the logistics of just making this process easy for people. But I do need to mention on the stick bit, unfortunately governments do need to regulate, and they do need to make unpopular decisions. And if you've got enough on on the other flip side of, you're trying to improve public transport services, and you are trying to improve cycleways, you're trying to maybe provide low-interest loans for electric bikes, but on the flip side, you're going to increase the cost of parking in the city so that it doesn't make it as attractive for people to drive in. And the people who love driving their cars into the city and having cheap parking will not vote for me. And, they may even boot me out. But unfortunately, a transition process is not always easy, and it's not always... there will need to be tough decisions, and some mayors do make decisions about things like cycleways, and they do get voted out. I mean, I've seen that in Australia. So, we need to support politicians that want to be brave and help them with the tools to do the tough things, as well as these kind of nice solutions, because unfortunately it's not a simple matter of that it's all just solutions. There are also things that you need to take away from people, and that, as a politician, that is sometimes tricky.
That I can sure understand. I mean, that's a very good point. It has come up also in some other discussions that this is really the front-runner mayors, the ones who are really courageous, have ideas. They can actually be very vulnerable then in the next election round, and that's not healthy actually for the overall long-term perspective that we have to do. Some cities have done these kinds of like special purpose vehicles, a bit like companies, where you sort of in a way, not outsource the transition, but you get the stakeholders together and you share the decision-making power. So that's one way. I know Leuven in Belgium is a typical example of that.
Yeah, I think in Victoria they have, some of the councils have established energy foundations to drive a lot of this work.
Yeah.
And it just makes it easier to sell it to the community when it's coming from a non-government organisation.
True. Maybe, Bertrand, can I ask you here, I'm just thinking about the business sector. You have, through your work, been a lot in contact with all the innovative businesses and so on. So how do you see that, their engagement, engaging them in this indeed emission reduction and also concerning their own activities? There's the aspect of companies which are producing solutions for others to deploy, and that's all very good. How about their own carbon footprint? And have you seen some good examples on how that is done and what drives them? What is the, if we as a regulator, we want to influence them, so how should we go about?
What drives them is two things. One, the business opportunities. If you have the possibility to sell a system that will divide by 5 the energy consumption of the heating or the cooling systems, you know you have a good product, and if you put it on the market, you're going to make money. Now, the other thing is also their own efficiency. If they can use the product from another company in order to be more efficient themselves during their production, they will do it. For example, if you have an industry that is producing solar cells, you need heat for the solar cells, but you are losing the heat through the chimney. So you have a lot of energy bill. But there is another company that has a system that recovers the heat from the chimney to give it back to the factory. And it's 20 to 40% reduction in the energy bill. So you see that you have a huge network of efficiency. You reduce your consumption, you reduce your energy bill, and at the same time you produce more and better of what can modernize the world and protect the environment. The second part of my answer will be a question, if you don't mind. As I said in the introductory panel with Tony, we have made a solution guide for cities. This guide is a treasure. I can say it because I did not write it myself. It's my team who did it. It's my team who is there with the Solar Impulse shirt, especially Alexandra Barakan. And it's more than a year of work with a lot of cities to see where the best technologies and the most efficient solutions have been used in order to make decarbonization of the city. How was it used? What are the success stories? And out of this, we made the guide of solutions to extend these success stories and see how they can solve the challenges of other cities. Now, this guide exists. There are 200 solutions inside. If I give it to a mayor, what is he going or she is going to be able to do with it? You have all these solutions inside, but how do you move from the reception of the solutions to the real implementation on the field? And for us at the Solar Impulse Foundation, that's really important to understand because it can then be a help to bring these solutions even more efficiently to the other members of the Convention of Mayors.
Good, thank you. This was a good point to indeed also advertise the guide that we're going to be reading and taking with us. I'm sure that will apply to all of us. It's good. And I remember we were talking about that idea first time when we met a long time ago. And then it was still an idea. Now it's good to see that things are getting very concrete. When we're talking about solutions, and it's often about technology, so we tend to a bit, we think solution, okay, we're talking about technologies. Of course, there are also other types of solutions. But then there's the cost of doing this, cost or price, as we were discussing, investment cost. And those investment costs have been going down in a number of technologies, including solar, but still there are issues. Now, in this context, many times there's a discussion about open source or proprietary technologies or solutions. So, meaning, can you use it for free, or do you have to pay royalties to someone? What's the situation now? Do we have enough solutions which are open source to do this kind of a transition? And I'm talking here worldwide, so that we include also, indeed, Africa, Europe, and Australia, the world. So is there enough open source, or should there be more of that? That's actually the question, and maybe I will actually go directly back to Bertrand, because you have focused on that, and then I would like to hear what the mayors think.
The solutions are open source. Reabsorb the CO2, or let's say reabsorb the heat of a chimney, or transform unrecyclable waste into construction stones, or get heat from the ground. This is open source, you can all do it. Now the question is that it's most probably much cheaper to buy the system from someone who already has it, rather than to develop it yourself. It's much more efficient. So if it is a system that is economically profitable, and you invest to buy it, you get the return on investment. And if you don't have the money to buy it, it's not a question of trying to do it yourself. Maybe there is, with the World Bank, with the European Investment Bank, with development aids, far enough money to pay for the upfront investment. And this would be cheaper than to fight for the IP or for the technology transfer itself. So I don't think we have to think it's an obstacle because the IP is in a country and you want to use it in another country. There are some commercial trades rules that allow to use the things, and very often it will allow also to make a license for the use, the production, and maybe Zambia can get some of these licenses to produce in your country the technologies that your country needs. So there is no obstacle as soon as there are these collaborations around the commercialization of solutions.
Thank you. Peut-être, oui. Mayor Youssef, because you had a... Go ahead, please.
Pour les solutions,
For solutions, it's also important for municipalities to work with academic institutions. Many laboratories in academic institutions and universities are looking for cities to work with, for the students and PhD students to work with, so that they can practice. In the majority of our projects in energy or other, we have partnered with universities that are very happy. It's a win-win partnership, really. And the university gives the municipality solutions for the municipality's issue, or to improve the well-being of citizens, or to fix an environment issue or cultural issue or another issue. And so here, working in collaboration with universities, I think gives us a lot of opportunities and gives the municipality the best way to solve an issue that they are facing. Okay, thank you very much.
I wonder if Mayor Voseka, would you like to comment on this? Because I can imagine this is
Yes,
an interesting
yes.
question.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I agree with Mayor there that it's important to work with universities. We are working with University of Zambia. They are helping us a lot in research and trying to, just give us the information that we need as a city. That's the reason why I actually said we don't have a sustainable energy climate action plan. This is because the people that we work with actually told us we'll need support and technical support and funding to prepare one like this one. And I also agree that I think to achieve all this that we want to move for transitioning, we'll definitely need support. But we have been working with the private sector as well in the city. A lot of private sectors have been trying to help, but obviously Mr. Bernard is here, and I'm sure he's listening. He's heard about Lusaka, the city of Lusaka, and how much we need to transition from hydro energy now to proper solar. And I hear him when he says it's not expensive. I think I hear you. I really get what he means by saying it's not expensive. It's only expensive in the beginning. So I hope that as a city we'll get somewhere there. Not only Lusaka, just as Africa, because the problems that my city goes through is the same problems that the other African cities are going through as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting when you talk about we have to go away from hydro to something like that. Actually, hydro, it's a renewable. So looking at it just like theoretically, so I think that's many countries would want to have a lot of that. So I would think that, okay, well, keep the hydro, add the biomass or solar or things like that. But is there the reason why you are doing that? I mean, you're saying that it's expensive, so it's like maintenance costs, or is it?
Okay, well, our government is
curious.
encouraging us to go solar as well. But
Okay.
of course, we've had new electricity hydro stations that have been built.
Right.
But I think it's because of how our population cannot afford, because right now with all this load shedding that is happening
Okay.
in our cities, and also the fuel. For example, if I don't have electricity, I use a generator, but the generator costs a lot of money because I need to buy fuel. So there are some of these things that we are going through as a city.
So it goes actually into it's a problem of grid management and storage and things like that, which is if you have to do a load shedding. Okay, we have a few minutes left. I have more questions here, but I think what I would like to do at this moment, perhaps turn to the floor, and it would be very interesting to hear what questions you might have. So I think perhaps the lady over here first.
Thank you very much. My name is Winifrida Shonde from Tanzania, and thank you for the good presentation. But maybe I may be I will act different, but I think we have to go to most implementation rather than discussing, as we already know there is no need more research to say if solar is cheap or higher than what we are using. Is no more time to say that biogas or wind or any renewable energy that you have to put the money there to do more research or feasibility study or whatever. I think as we say that together for implementation, let us now start to act, not discuss if it's better or not. I'm doing this by with the following references. Number one, let us use what we have to implement on the better way. For instance, currently, as an environmental ambassador and CEO of NGO, I introduced a greening education program just to make sure that each student in the country understand the renewable energy, they understand how to plant a tree, and in order to make it done, I just make that each student make sure that he or she plant a tree by her name. And it's just a work, and it doesn't even need a lot of money to make it done. And a lot of schools, they are keeping on doing that. And even the school, they have their forest name. So you can see that just simple structure, how it helped me to reach on the simple way because of my capacity. How if we put our energy on making sure all over the countries, each student act upon the same strategy. On the same way, you can see we are the actor here, we are discussing here, but you find some of us, we don't implement. we don't act and we just share that we don't do that. How can you tell others to do if you are not doing it? So the simple way, the same way roadmap I used to for greening school, let's make it education to each school that at least they have the single, maybe per week, a single program to show them renewable energy is this. Maybe if you have agriculture, how to do maybe biogas and or do whatever. We have people who have knowledge on the school. Then put it as a mandatory to each school, student to learn from kindergarten to university to know that this is A, B, C, D, E. Otherwise, we'll be, this generation will fed up. Then at the end of the day, the second generation, they will come to discuss the same thing which you are discussing here. So I think for the same way we are doing now, let's put it to our schools to make this generation which we have today, it's like they have it, they grow with it, then they just make to the other generation. And on the other thing, which I request you is,
maybe let's wrap up a little by little. Yeah,
okay.
Very good point, but yes.
Just what I want to wind up on the issue of making that each country to follow what we want. If we can just join our hand together, all countries, agreed on the regulation that, each country they have to do A, B, C, D, E. And we are talking about this renewable energy and or issue of solar, whatever. If we can put just like a range that each seller or each person who have providing this solar energy or whatever, they have to be on this range. They have to be following on this range, so to make it accessible and how to get it in a very simple way. Yeah, just what I want to contribute.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you were very clear on and underlining these points of education, and I think that is a very valid point. It's all over the place, all over the world actually, the education, because the younger generation is the one who's going to drive this very soon. And it's about understanding and developing those business opportunities then, when understanding, I think that's clear. So I very much I agree with the idea of deploying very quickly existing solutions, and I believe that's exactly what Mr. Picard has been doing. And I think Mayor of Hobart and Reynolds also pointed out the issue of education, which is there, and this is clear. I see a ticking clock here who says that we have about 30 seconds of time, so I guess no more questions, unless I think there was one comment. 26 seconds, please. So here at least.
Okay, now it's good. Covenant of Mayors of Ukraine, and I have a question to the mayors. Energy transitions means that you need to move to climate neutrality till 2015. What about your municipality? Are you ready to achieve this goal to be climate neutrality in 2015?
And Reynolds, maybe?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
So climate neutrality by...
Within Covenant of Mayors, you need, if you sign new commitment, you need to move to climate neutrality till 2015. Are you ready to be climate neutrality in 2015?
We're certainly on that journey, and we started the journey in the year 2000, and our emissions and energy use have dropped by about 80% compared to 2000, but we still have more to do, and our next commitment is to try and be carbon neutral by 2030, because the state of Tasmania has already made that commitment. We want to match them. And because we have hydroelectricity, there are, in some ways, the main area we need to take action is transport fuels for our fleet and our landfill, the methane that's coming from our landfill. So the methane from the landfill is the most challenging. We've got a zero waste by 2030 target as well. And we've seen a massive 40% drop in the waste going to landfill through programs we've been running. But we've obviously got 60% to achieve by 2030. And still then we have to work out how we stop the methane leaking from that landfill for and capturing it and using as much of it as we can. So we're certainly on the journey, and we've got that ambitious goal to be carbon neutral as an organisation by 2030, and then have that bigger conversation with our community about what sort of target they're willing to take on. Would it be carbon neutral by 2050? We certainly hope that the community will get behind that for their own, the entire municipality.
That's me, Chicken.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would just say that the COMSA cities actually, when we sit, we discuss all this. Like I said, we are already preparing for this transition. All we seek is technical support and finance support. But all our COMSA cities are ready for the transition. Yeah.
Very good. Time is up, so I'm afraid I have the need to actually end this discussion here. So I want to thank very much for the panelists. I think you've done an excellent job. We could have gone on with quite a few points here. It's been really lively. Thank you also for the audience. Very, very clear messages about dedication and goals. To wrap up this would be difficult. I think we've just, well, I can say we've touched on the issue of solutions in terms of technologies and the issue of the importance to see the difference between investments and costs. I think that is a very key point, but also how to then manage to sell this, so to say, to the citizens who are not all economists, who have their own businesses, what they live from. So if there's a change, it's going to hurt someone, it's going to help someone else. So you need to innovate, educate this. And I think their schools are a good place to start, and these community discussions which are taking place. And then, of course, we do want to recall that companies are needed in this as well. So we need the public and the private sector, because that can create the kind of dynamic that will lead us to solutions. And then sometimes there are surprising business opportunities here, like the Mayor Youssef talked about the biomass, how to create the source of funding for the municipality. And those are actually very necessary. Many municipalities are under a lot of stress, running out of budgets, having more to do with less money and higher energy prices. So this way, turning this kind of a challenge into an opportunity that actually brings money, it's great. So thank you very much. Thank you, audience. And let's enjoy a little break before there is the next session.